All right, thank you. All right, so we have a whole lot lining up for today. As usual, we will have from now till 10:30, we'll have PEP, and today we'll be talking about communication skills, presenting and writing skills. And thereafter, we'll be moving on to the ISO, which we'll be talking about ISO 1002, talking about customer service, and then we'll move on to establishing requirements as the third section of today's class, and then we will round up with project management, talking about stakeholder management. So our trainer is already on the call and she is ready for us. The person who will be taking us in the first session of today's class is Tinuke Ogunbiyi. She is a practiced engineer with over 11 years work experience in both Motorola and BlackBerry in US and Canada. Originally a computer engineer from Obafemi Awolowo University in Nigeria, Tina obtained a master's degree in telecommunications from Southern Methodist University, Dallas, Texas, before doing an executive MBA program in Richard Ivey Business School, University of Western ON, and switched to banking. As a banker, Tina has worked in both TD and Scotia Bank with over 7 years experience in the financial sector as a risk manager and mitigation strategist. Currently at Scotia Bank, Tina is a senior manager, small business SB policy and strategy analytics within global risk management and manages their SB portfolio analytics. Tina is the founder of Creative Bees Inc. Is an organization focused on empowering entrepreneurs, building communities of interest to inform, educate, and empower through right mindset, action, and habit. Ladies and gentlemen, with a clapping of hands in the chat room, please let's welcome our first trainer for today. Hello, ma'am. If you can hear me, you can take it off from here. Welcome to class.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everybody. I'm used to saying good morning, good evening, but I know it is morning everywhere. So I'm excited to be here. It's really always a pleasure to talk about a topic I'm very passionate about. I'm very driven. So before I start, just because we're talking about communication, personal communication, and engagement, two things. One, I requested if the PowerPoint slides could be shared on my behalf. The reason is because my PowerPoint, I use a MacBook, and I think they made an upgrade that threw my OS out of whack. So my PowerPoint is not even functioning. I can open it, but it's mostly gibberish. So I think I reached out to Boma. He said to request for, I think the coordinator, Damola, anybody that can help me share the slides, please go ahead and do so. And you will be controlling the slides for me. That's the first request. Second request is please, because this is a virtual call, and most of us have pictures on our screens, have names, some of us don't. Please do me the liberty of dropping in the chat where you are dialing in from. For instance, people like me that live in a little town, in a little country, Toronto, Ontario, in Canada, you can just put Toronto, Ontario, or you can put Toronto, Canada. Or if, like my mother, you live in Abuja, Nigeria, you can, put Abuja, Nigeria, if you're calling in from. Or I know they said some people are calling in from Malawi. Wherever you're dialing in from, just drop it in the chat. It helps us know the scope of our audience for today. So thank you so much for sharing the first slide. Again, this is something I'm passionate about. I have, for my understanding, 1 hour, and this is 4:37 a.m. So because it's supposed to start, apology, I think it's 9:30 a.m. Nigerian time. Okay, so because I have an hour, 8 minutes have been eaten into already. No worries. I would summarize everything and be done within 52 minutes. So what that means is that by 5:30 my time, which should be 10:30 Nigerian time, we should be wrapping up. Okay, I guess that sounds good by the coordinator. We always like to make sure that we cover any lost time. Awesome. So running through the slides quickly. If you can go back to the first slide, please. I just want to start with that introduction because it's good to start with what are we here about. Wonderful. Thank you so much. So this is about personal excellence, program, session one, communication skills. And what does that mean? Presentation and writing. In other words, speak, listening, and writing. And believe me, I think it's one of the most underrated skill sets needed. However, anybody that ends up leaving academia, or you have a first degree, second degree, and you go into the industry, you quickly realize that the art of communication, as they call it, is one of the most key needed skills to move your career and yourself forward. Okay, so we're going to be going through the rudiments, and I'm sure we're all going to learn a lot today. So next slide quickly. Thank you. Awesome. So the module overview is very straightforward. What is communication? How do we communicate? Verbal, non-verbal. Many of us do this, unconsciously without even knowing it. That's the funny thing, like right now, if you see me, I'm moving my hands in the air. Most of us do this, and communicate that way, and this is obviously non-verbal, and also the body language. So different aspects of communication, listening and feedback, very important. Presentation skills, which is something that I have learned. Again, nobody is born necessarily with this. Some of us are maybe born a bit more orative, but I'm telling you the truth that practice always makes perfect. Like we said, practice makes perfect, and writing skills. So next slide, please, quickly. Next slide, please. Okay. While we're going and waiting on the next slide, I'm hoping it's not me. Awesome. What is communication? What is communication? So our manual has it very well outlined. Yes, you may have to go back to the previous. I want us to be on slide 3 for now. Thank you. So communication, I'm going to read what we have, and then we're going to go into explaining what this really means. Communication is the act of conveying intended information from one group to another through the use of mutually understood signs and rules. In other words, how a people understand each other. And I'm doing this very slowly so that we would get the meat of this message. How people understand each other, it's something that it's, for instance, if I'm speaking English, okay, I use English words, English expressions, to communicate my language. And my understanding is that if I'm addressing an English speaking audience, they will hear me and understand me correctly. Now, this is a very broad definition, but let's go a few layers down because that's what we're here for. In a nutshell, communication, to communicate effectively, you are exchanging ideas, thoughts, and emotions. What do I mean by that? You can hear me right now, right? What you're hearing is a number of things. You are hearing, one, the tone of my voice. You are assessing my body language. And as you are assessing both my body language and what you are seeing, your mind is processing the words I am speaking. In fact, English language helps us understand. There have been researchers on this, that communication is largely, to a large extent, before you even hear the words that come out of any person's mouth, you've already assessed their tone of voice. 38% of communication is tone of voice. 55% is body language. So tone of voice, body language already covers over 90%. That is before you even get to what words are coming out of their mouth. Are we together? I like to say this because I always say that tone, body language, even trump words. Okay, and we're going to go into a few examples of what I mean by that. But it is the process of exchanging ideas. Okay, you are hearing what I'm saying and communicating what I'm saying in the bit that what I'm saying makes sense to you and you can assimilate it in. Okay, now what is the process of this? We have information, okay, communicating ideas, communicating thoughts, feelings, and emotions. Very quickly, I always like to run through an exercise when I get to this point. And I always like to say, let's take any phrase, okay? Let's take any phrase. Say, you ask me for help. Mrs. Tinuke, help me with something. And I say, oh, I'll be glad to help. Or I say, oh, I'll be glad to help. Or I say, oh, I'll be glad to help. I've said the same word, the same sentence, 3 different ways. The first one, again, you come to me asking for assistance or help, and I say, oh, I'll be glad to help. My second expression, oh, I'll be glad to help. The last one, oh, I'll be glad to help. Which of these three will communicate to my hearer or my requester that genuinely I'll be glad to help? Please, let's drop our oh, thank you. Some people said the first one. I should have said originally. I'm very into audience interaction, especially even if it's virtual. I like to know that my audience is following. Thank you. Yes, awesome. So people have been dropping in. Yes, the first. Good. Why is that? Perhaps because the why is that? Please let me even just get our. Why do we think the first communication style, communicated best to the tone? Wonderful. Okay. Anybody else? What about the three different ways I expressed myself? Would communicate differently and different words to my hearer. The tone. The first response came with excitement. Beautiful excitement. Also, my body language, right? My body language. When you say, "Oh, I'll be glad to help," my tone says, "Wow, okay," tells my requester, this lady has heard me, she understood what I'm saying, and she wants to. My second response is more like, oh, like in fact, I've disturbed this woman. She just barely tolerating me before I leave. And the third was almost like, anger. So between the second and the third, I'm either anger or just, tolerating you. But the first really communicated that I understood and I'm willing to help. Now we see why the words you speak are important, but how we communicate is also very important. In other words, they always say that communication is not just what the speaker says, not just what the speaker says, but what the hearer understands. And that is one key phrase. Please write this down in your pocketbook or in your notes if you carry an iPad or you're on the I ecosystem like me. Communication is not just about what we say, what the speaker says, but what the hearer, the other people, the other party understands. Are we getting it? That's why a lot of times you can say, I hear the words that are coming out of your mouth, but my brain does not believe you. Okay, I hear what you are saying, but I somehow am not convinced. Why? Because the other factors that come into communication, apart from words, are not lining up. Does that make sense? So the third was having a rethink. Absolutely. Wonderful. So now that I think we're all on the same page, let's go to the next slide quickly, please. Thank you. Thank you. I know I'm going to be demanding a lot from my coordinator. Awesome. So again, we said the communication process, right? We have the sender or the speaker, what messages they send. Again, if you're speaking English language like me, there are certain sentence structures. English language, we have verbs. I think it's across every language, but English is maybe because a language I speak very well. We have, you have your pronoun, you have your verb, you have your adjective, how you arrange, and you send information in form of ideas, emotions, thoughts, those obviously come through words, the channel of how it's communicated, whether you communicate through a whisper, you communicate through, a verbal presentation, an audience presentation, or, whatever way, or music, song, whatever, writing. Communication is beautiful, but how the other person at the other end, the other parties understand what you are saying. Key thing to always remember, I can communicate something as basic to an individual as I love you, but the other person may perceive it as something entirely different. Are we getting me? So on making sure that you understand that communication has to be perceived from both directions is a very important key. Next slide, please. Okay, so we're going to be moving on. We've discussed, communication, what is it? We've discussed the process. We're going to quickly move into sending messages, okay? We have verbal communication and we have non-verbal. Guys, everything, is a 20-slide presentation. I want to assure you that every slide here has something you need to take home. So bear with me. I know we're on virtual, but if you can make sure that you follow along, because if you can grasp a lot of what is said today, I tell you, your personal communication, your work or your career or your business communication, and even communication at large will be greatly improved. Okay, so verbal communication, where you are speaking, conversations, phone, presentations, your voice carries the message. Again, like I said earlier, if you're doing a presentation or you're talking to somebody, 7% of what you say is your words. but a large percentage, your tone of voice, especially if you're presenting, you're always advised to have an even tone. In other words, don't dilate, undulate, oh, no, no, no. If you, if your voice keeps, dilating, you lose people. You lose people. That's why it's very important to make sure that your tone remains as even and as clear as you can make it. And believe me, it's not even about your accent because I work in a multicultural environment. I have people that are from Asia, people that are European, people like me that are originally of Nigerian descent. Whether or not you have an accent or whatever it's from, is not the key thing. The key aspect is how well you articulate and communicate your words. So that is speaking, okay? And then we have writing, for which I'm very passionate about, because in fact, I get upset or offended when somebody sends me a message. It's about, maybe 8 paragraphs long. You don't bullet point, you don't highlight. In fact, I'm just like, you wasted my time. So in fact, to do you a favor and me a favor, I will take your message, copy it, format it for you, bullet point, and send it back to you and say, is this what you meant? Because a well communicated, even written, format, it helps both the sender and the receiver. And I say, you know what, communication is so precious and time is so precious. Let's help each other to communicate appropriately. So for verbal communication, we have speaking and we have writing. Now we're going to move to the next slide, non-verbal communication. And I want us to pay close attention to this because I think that's where most of us get lost in the medley. Okay, we think all communication is our words and our writing. My coordinator, please, I'm on the next slide. But believe me, our non-verbal probably even carries more than our verbal. So non-verbal communication, we have eye contact. Again, my coordinator, please, I'm on the next slide. Can you change it for me? Thank you. Non-verbal, we have eye contact. This for me is a very important point to raise. Why? Because I come from a culture, and most of us probably come from a similar culture, where eye contact has in some ways been considered as disrespectful. What do I mean by that? I grew up understanding that if you're talking to elders, you don't make eye contact. Believe me, it took me a long time in my professional life to overcome that understanding and become comfortable with it. Let me use these words. My brethren, especially those of you from countries like mine, if you are from a country where eye contact is considered as quote unquote disrespectful, my advice is we have to quickly assess and understand which environments eye contact is necessary and eye contact can be avoided. What do I mean by that? Now, if you're talking to maybe somebody in your household, a father, a whatever, okay, maybe you can adopt the eye contact being disrespectful. But in the workplace, it is highly essential. Talking to customers, talking to your bosses, your people, those that your managers that you report to, talking to your direct reports, you have to be able to make eye contact. Why? Because that communicates, first of all, confidence, sincerity, clarity, and it makes your presentation or whatever you are saying credible. I'm saying this because, again, like I said, it's the most natural thing in the world to make eye contact. However, believe me, because some of us grew up in cultures where it was downplayed or in fact frowned upon, you find that it takes you longer to get used to what people grow up understanding as normal, and you are playing catch up. So if you are from a culture where it's not necessarily advised, please make sure you always assess your situation. Okay, is this a situation where I should make eye contact, especially if it's in the professional world? And most times, professional, whether the customer is older than you or not, if you're in a banking setting or you are, customer facing, if the customer feels uncomfortable, they will turn away. But at least you have communicated to them that what I'm telling you is credible, it's sincere, and I'm very confident. Are we together? So non-verbal eye contact speaks a lot. Facial expression. They would advise those in customer facing roles that, even if you are disagreeing with your customer in your head, okay, try to keep at best an even expression. And even, a slight smile. Why? Because at least you're giving your customer the benefit of speak your case, relate what you are trying to say and not shutting them down. What are some of the things you should not do for non-verbal, facial expressions? Because I'm talking to you. When you're doing this, if I give information and I'm doing this, what does that tell you? I don't agree with you. And in fact, my non-verbal is stronger than my verbal. I haven't said anything, but my shaking my head when you're talking kind of tells you that whatever you're saying, this lady is not following you or doesn't believe you. Okay. What are some of the other non-verbal expressions that trump, even your gestures? When talking to somebody and they are making so many gestures, what does that tell you? They are distracted, right? So that goes to show that we always have to assess and gauge and make sure that we're aligning our verbal with our non-verbal communication. Okay, I'm going to give room for, again, anybody with comments as I go on, please feel free to drop in the chat. At the end, I'm going to try and make sure that I leave at least 10 minutes for us to answer any questions, okay? So we'll move to the next slide, okay? What impression does body language give? Now, I'm gonna have us comment on this. I've talked a lot about body language and the different ways, they can even trump the language you're speaking. So, and I always like to joke that I come from a culture that's very expressive body body language, that a lot of times I have to make sure that I don't, in communication, you don't allow your body language, to mask or downplay your words, especially when you're in a professional setting. So maybe you try to put your hand somewhere that and not too visible, or you use it appropriately. So what impression does body language give? We're going to start with arms crossed. Arms crossed, eyes down. Someone tell us, what does that, when somebody is arms crossed, what does that mean? And eyes down. What does that immediately communicate? It's in the slide, but please, I want us to also drop it in the chat. Arms crossed, eyes down. What does that immediately say? Anybody? Please, let's drop in the chat. Arms crossed, eyes down. What does that immediately communicate to us? That the person is likely closed off, defensive, unapproachable. Now, I'm emphasizing this particularly because, believe me, I had to learn it. And I learned it, in fact, in the way that even when you're not eyes down, if you are eyes focused on the person, arms crossing, many cultures consider that as closed off. However, the irony was I grew up in an environment where arms crossed helps even feel more relaxed. You arms cross, you lean back. I always felt it makes me sound more attentive, but apparently not. And I was called out on it, especially during my MBA class. That, oh, if you are listening to whoever, a direct report, a peer, a manager, somebody that you report to, arms crossing automatically says you are closed off. And so I had to consciously make the effort to make sure that, as far as my body expression goes, I don't default to that. Are we together? And I like to say that because, again, some people may have come from the same culture or the same mindset that I did, and so it's something that it's an easy thing to avoid shooting ourselves in the foot. Now, the second one is upright, open body, steady gaze. Like I said, the eye contact, steady gaze. What does that say? When you have a steady gaze, eye contact with either your customer, your client, your direct report, or your superior, what does that say? Somebody should drop their perspective in the chat. What does that say? Attentive. Absolutely attentive. And for me, that is where, I always like to emphasize that some things, your desire or need to appear confident and attentive should trump any cultural, forgive me for using the word bias, or cultural understanding. Culturally, direct eye contact may be considered, but believe me, in a work setting, you make the eye contact. If the customer on the other end or the other end feels, they would look away, but you communicate your confidence, your engagement, and the fact that you are trustworthy. Okay. And the last one, you are slouched, as I said, you are all over the place, you are fidgety. What does that say? In fact, most times people, if you are fidgety and someone approaches you, they'll say, okay, should I give you a minute? Should I maybe come back? Or let me even put it this way, because most of us communicate on the phone. One thing that is a pet peeve for me, personal pet peeve, when I call somebody calls me, and it's loud in the background. Now, loud in the background, I can't hear you clearly. My question is, can you hear me clearly? And so I'm asking the question, sorry, can you hear me? Can you hear me? And the person goes, yeah, yeah, yeah. But then I wonder, okay, it's loud. Can you like reduce? Because there's no way you can carry on an effective communication with somebody when there's loud, music or whatever. So I usually say, can I call you back maybe at a better time? Because some people can accommodate it for some odd reason, but I just can't, or I call you and you're talking to somebody around you, because even on the phone, you can tell. My first impression is, okay, can I call you back maybe at a better time? Because obviously, if you're distracted, that communication would not be effective. Are we together? So these are some of the things that whether it's on the phone, or however we're communicating, that we can, express to people we're communicating to, and they can express to us. Body language does a great deal. So what are we saying again? Number one, arms crossed, not a very good sign of openness to receive. Slouch, distracted, fidgety, it gives the sign signal that you're distracted. But when you are upright, steady gaze, eye contact, it's very helpful. Awesome. So next slide, please. Wonderful. Now we're moving to what we're calling core. So to buttress and take us back, we covered communication types. We have verbal, which we said speaking and writing. Non-verbal, which we said, your eye contact, facial expression, your gestures. Okay. Now moving to the next slide, we're going to talk about core communication skills. I'm going to spend a lot of time here. I believe we're going to run through to the end of the class with this. So core communication skills. My coordinator, please move me to the next slide. Thank you. Core communication skills. What are they? Listening, feedback, presentation, and writing. And I like to smile whenever I say this because these are some of the most underrated, or should I say, not as communicated skill sets that are needed. But believe me, when you meet people that are great communicators, they exhibit probably most or all of these skill sets. Okay, now let's go through listening. When you think of listening, what words like, and I need us to try our best to drop something for me in the chat. When you think of listening, what word drops into your mind to communicate that this person is listening to me? What word? For me, that word is active. Active listening. So please drop your own word, because for me, listening is, again, when it's not active, I find myself asking the person, are you listening? Are you listening? Why? Because I don't feel it's active listening. And this is why I say so. What is active listening? Okay. Active listening helps you what? Ensure, my coordinator, please. I'm on the next slide. Active listening helps you ensure that you hear the other person and that the other person knows you are listening. That's why I say, for me, if listening is not active, at least I know I find myself asking the other person, are you listening? What do I mean by that? Even with my husband, my spouse, if I'm talking and he's doing something, I keep asking, are you listening to me? Are you listening? Why? Because I'm not getting the cues that tell me this person is listening. Okay? Very important. Active listening is that you hear the other person, and not only that, the other person understands from your cues that indeed you are hearing. So, what are some of these cues? Okay, first of all, you face the speaker and you hold comfortable eye contact. Again, comfortable eye contact may be that your facial expression is not one of anger or forgive me, disregard or disgust. You face the other person and maintain comfortable, which means that your eyes should be soft on the eyes. I know I'm throwing terminologies out there. Soft on the eyes mean at least you have relaxed your eyes, so you're not, clouding your eyes with an expression. At least be soft on the eyes so the other person can feel like your words are going in. Eye contact, soft on the eyes, you face them. Okay. Don't interrupt. Now, this is a hard one. And I say so because, hear me out, please. In instances where people are giving structured information, in other words, the person communicating to you is structured. They have a certain number of points they want to relay, maybe one or more, and they relay the first and pause for you to take it in. Lack of interrupting is okay. But where they are jumbled, you may find yourself saying at one point, apologies, just before we go to another point, just to be sure we understand each other on the first point. I recommend when somebody is giving you points that are structured, please make sure you don't interrupt. Let them finish. But when you find somebody that may be going to another point before even allowing you to digest the first point, I believe there are respectful ways you can say apologies just before we go to the other point to be sure that I understand you. At that point, you're interrupting not because you want to be rude, but because you want to be sure that you don't miss the main gist they are communicating. Are we together? Okay. So the first one, you face the speaker, give eye hold comfortable eye contact. 2, don't interrupt, especially where the person has structured points to give. Listen, allow them finish. 3, nod. Nodding is so helpful. Why? Because it shows that you are following along what they are saying, and it encourages the speaker. Okay, now you can add small verbal cues like I see, go on. That's optional. Nodding most times does the trick or does the job. Okay, and the last point, very important, after they have run through what they are saying, it's helpful to say awesome. So just to be sure I understand, let me reiterate, or let me speak back to you what I believe I heard you say. Believe me, when you speak or you paraphrase back to them, you'll be amazed how after listening for 5 minutes, nothing you thought they were saying was what they were saying. Has it happened to anybody before? If it has, please drop your comment. Somebody has spoken to you for 5 minutes, and when they are done, you say, okay, this is what I understand. Is this? And you say it back, and they're like, no, that's not what I said. And you're like, okay, I obviously didn't get it. Please let me understand. So the reason for the paraphrasing back to them is to ensure that you are following along appropriately. Also, we're moving on quickly. So we have active listening, feedback skills. My coordinator, please, we're going to run with the speed of light, like one of my mentors says at this point. Feedback skills, okay? Key point here, feedback is a gift. Feedback is a gift. I know most times it can be taken as insulting or derogatory. Believe me, if we can, and there is that, but if we can sometimes, sieve through, we find that the message in the feedback is really what, is for us to move forward with. So oftentimes people's feedback does not have an insulting, yes, let's look at the difference between insult and feedback. Okay, now, so when feedback can be considered as insulting when obviously it attacks the other person. It is vague and it is based on a lot of emotion. Now, when somebody feels offended, feels like their rights have not been, or they have not been properly attended to, yes, we get more emotional, and emotions don't necessarily allow us communicate clearly. Yes, because emotions can cause us to shout, or mumble our words, clouds our judgments. In that case, yes, the feedback can be difficult to understand within the medley. However, or the person just wants to be, attacking, offensive. Okay. However, feedback in itself addresses the behavior, is specific and factual, and looks forward to improve. Now, there is something that's recommended for feedback. It's called the sandwich approach. I like to share it. It is that when you want to give feedback, don't particularly look for the moment when the thing happens, because if emotions are high, it's helpful to cool down, have a level thinking before you give that feedback. What are some of the ways you can do it? It's called a sandwich approach. Okay, so this works with direct reports a lot, or peers. So what you can do, or even your managers. So you start out with a compliment, because if you got a sandwich, you have the bread, then you have the middle, that is the salami or the sausage and cheese, and you have the bread. So you start out with a compliment, something that they do well, because what does that do? It softens the heart of the receiver. They become receptive. And then you go to the meat of the matter, what you really got there to say, and you say it obviously in a reasonable tone, even if it's something, because everybody makes mistakes, right? And it's helpful to know that it may be your turn to give feedback today, tomorrow it may be your turn to receive feedback. So it's good to sow things that come back to you in good measure, pressed down, shaking together, running over, that you would like to have. And then once you have given that, obviously you pause and allow them take it in. If they even want to, maybe ask questions or defend themselves, you don't try to, let them do that. And then at the end, you end with another compliment. Okay, why do you do that? So that you maintain the relationship. Feedback should not destroy relationships, rather it should help us mend them. Okay, so developing effective feedback skills. We're going to run through that quickly. My coordinator, I'm on slide 11 now. Focus on behaviors, keep goal oriented, very important. Ensure understanding, keep feedback impersonal as much as we can. It's very helpful to do that. Make feedback well timed. Don't send all, just delay the message and let it go. Direct feedback towards behavior that is controllable. Awesome. So we've covered, like we said, listening skills. Active listening is obviously my preference, listening. Feedback skills. Now we're going to presentation skills. Awesome. This is the one that we can spend all day here. Absolutely all day here. But you realize that what we're doing is we're conveying ideas, concepts, issues talked about or spoken to a group or audience. So what are some of the things you have to take note when it comes to presentation skills? One, you have to understand yourself. Who am I? What qualifies me to do this? There's something they talk about, they call it imposter syndrome. Believe me, I always wondered what does that mean, and I've come to understand that we may not call it imposter syndrome, but it's simply just that knowing voice in your head that tells you are not worthy to do this, you are not qualified to do this, that challenges your qualifications. If it helps, believe me, I even advocate for this. Whatever you are presenting, do it ahead of time, before the time. Record yourself. I've done it before meetings before my voice and how I was delivering. I had 5 minutes. I normally had like 3 minutes to summarize, like main points of the portfolio for the month. So I have to figure out, as one of my MBA professors would say, lead with your most salient point. So I want to figure out how I'm organizing my thoughts and how I come across. So I record myself and then listen to me and say, okay, Tina, if you're in the audience, does this communicate? And so it helped me a lot. But whatever it does, make sure that you don't face your audience feeling like an imposter. An imposter means you don't feel like you are worthy or you are qualified. Believe me, it's not about your degrees. It's not about your accolades. It's about how well you know the material and you're presenting it. So first of all, deal with yourself. Make sure that you are confident in what you're presenting, and then your audience. Who are you addressing? Very important. They always say that if your message or your presentation doesn't align with the thought pattern of a 13-year-old, you are likely going to lose your audience. Now, I say this respectfully to those in the research fields that can present material that you're like, what? That's a different scenario. But generally speaking, your material should be able to be digested by a 13-year-old. If a 13-year-old can understand what you're saying, believe me, you will capture your audience. Okay? Awesome. And then the last thing, subject centered. That is, what subject am I presenting? How well do I know my material? Okay? And never can we overflood preparation. Awesome. So we're going to move quickly to 5 questions you must know. My coordinator, please work with me. What am I presenting? Why am I presenting this? Where? Very important. Like I said, when I was preparing for this, it occurred to me that it's going to be virtual, and many people may not even have their cameras on. So I have to come up with ways to ensure I keep my audience engaged and I am aware that they are engaged. So I ask myself, what are some of the things I can do? I said, obviously, to start out with having people drop where they're calling in from, because obviously that tells me immediately that people are listening to me. Along the ways, I'll ask questions and I'll ask people to drop in the chat, and I also obviously bring personal examples, and make things lively, because I want to be sure that even though it's virtual, I don't lose my audience. Okay, so these are some of the things that we have to consider. And then how, obviously, are you presenting, and who is your audience? Very important. If I was running this course for 13-year-olds or 12-year-olds, believe me, half these slides will not be there. Half of them will not be there. I will make it so picturesque, have them do activities, because that's what engages teenagers, right? You have to make sure that you engage them, and if there's no activity, believe me, you're as good as just giving them, as we do in our country, gift cards to go and play and eat ice cream, but if I'm presenting to professionals, obviously that are more centered, are more attention focused, then you can run through 20 slides, I know that at least that they're listening to you. Okay, awesome. So knowing these things, again, I said for 5 questions for presentations, what are you presenting? Why? Why is this material? And you have to always lead with why is my material essential? Where? What's your medium? How? And who? Okay, what makes a good communicator? Now, I'm not even going to go into this. Before we go into for me, I don't think I need to. I just want to ask. We all have been, we're about 8 billion people on the planet and counting. I used to say 7, but my nieces corrected me that we're 8 billion now. Drop for me in the chat who, for you, dead or alive, are some of the greatest communicators you have been inspired by. I'm sure everybody has somebody. So please drop your own. And I want to see people's own so I can give you mine. People that I admire their communication skills. Absolutely. They can walk into war rooms and at least still walk out with their head intact. So drop for me, please, who your top one communicator. Okay, someone said Nelson Mandela. Awesome. Anybody else? Please, we are, like I said, we've had to Barack Obama. So I knew somebody will mention Barack. Barack is an awesome communicator. Olumide said Tinuke. Thank you for that vote of confidence. Dr. Orlando, yes, wonderful. So you see, we all have people we admire in terms of communication. For me, it is so key because all the things I'm saying here, you will forget. Clear, concise, empathetic, prepared. But the people that you look up to, say, wow, this person communicates awesomely. I always find out what makes their communication so key. Like Barack, when he gets on there, there's something they call, and excuse me for doing this, but I think it's going to help some of us understand something they call stage presence. Olumide can probably, Dr. Orlando can attest to this. There's a musician that is not with us, he's late now, but I admired his stage presence. Because when that guy got on stage, like everything else dulled in the background. What do I mean? The whole focus, they can be throwing bombs behind him, but because of how his aura came out so significantly, I mean, he had his fans fainting and whatever. But I studied him, that what made him different. He said, he's late now. If I call his name, we all know him. Most of us know him. Sometimes before he goes on tour, he spends a year, a full 12 months or more, practicing his moves. Every move is deliberate. Every action is timed. You know what I mean? That when he gets on stage, people are there screaming, screaming, screaming. And the man is doing his job. He said he felt he was born to be an entertainer, and the man did his job. Who am I referring to? Anybody can guess. Michael Jackson. So these are things that I look at how people hone their skills. And I say, never mind what the book says. You look for what makes good communicators, and assess those skills also. So we're going to move in effective communication, the chef and the onions. What makes the chef absolutely good at what they do? Have you seen chefs cutting onions? Believe me, it's a skill I never bothered to learn, but I wish I had. There's a way they hold the onion and they hold the knife, and it just keeps, it's as if it's a very smooth, or it looks to me, a smooth process. Believe me, that process and technique takes learning. But when they have honed the skill and they come, you looking at them thinks it's just, a smooth slice. Don't try it. Oh. Don't cut your fingers. But the key thing there is practice. Okay, moving on to the next slide, writing skills. Now, this is where I say I absolutely, absolutely love, because again, like I said, if you send me a message or you send me something, WhatsApp or anything that's not bullet pointed, it's not clearly outlined, and you want me to weave between to pick out your points in absolute, let me just say, just to be fair and say, okay, you may have been busy, I will copy your message, paste it, bullet point it for you, and send it back and say, is this what you mean? Why am I saying this? The better the writing skills we have, the better communicators we are. Okay? So what are some of the key things in writing skills. It's one of the most common ways of communicating. And how do we communicate by writing? There's the written text, there's prose, there's novels. Nowadays most of us don't read physical books anymore, but we read. We have on social media channels, we have WhatsApp, we have Instagram, we have Facebook. We have, yes. And believe me, the important thing is all these are communication channels. The important thing is that you communicate appropriately. It is a complex activity involving many sub skills. Now, writing is interesting because you can read a book and or present a message, or even look at this slide. Let me start with this slide so that we follow what I'm saying. The heading is written what? In bold, larger font. The actual bullet points are what? Smaller, and they are bullet pointed. Never mind that you have what do they call it now? Pictograms. Okay, but those are just indicating bullet points. Why? Because it is separating the material, telling you that this is what we're discussing. These are the different points, and at the end you have a different way. So this is all, guys. This is not random. Even how this slide has been arranged, it has been arranged to capture the attention of the audience. Are we getting it? So even in the picturesque world we have today, we have to be sure that our communication, even written, captures. Now, if like me, you write a lot of presentations to senior management, that you cannot necessarily engage too many pictograms. You can bold in some cases, you can italize where you are allowed. Why? You are trying to highlight important information even within the bullet points. Are we together? Awesome. Okay, so good writing should involve choosing the appropriate, my coordinator, I'm on the next slide, choosing the appropriate grammatical structures, following rules of mechanics. We can spend, in fact, the whole 30 minutes on this. But I advise us, please go back and read slides 16, 17. My coordinator, you are behind. I am on slide 18 now. Yes, go back and read these slides. Is this slide 18? Sorry, I'm on slide 17. Yes, awesome. Go back and read all the slides on writing skills, because writing skills, for me, honestly, can take you a whole 45 minutes. Okay, there's an art to it. But what I advise is go and look at people that write, especially like things like WSJ, Washington Street Journal, New York Times. They're writers. There's a way they write. And if you look at it and you read it, they write to keep your attention. So they don't bombard you with too much information or too much. And it's not about how grammatical you are. It's about how the flow of your writing. Okay? All right. So good writing should involve a high degree of organization, a systematic logical development, use of accurate words, meanings. Try to avoid ambiguity, choosing relevant, necessary details. Okay? I think we've covered a lot of writing. So we're getting to the end of the slide. I think we're at slide 19 now. My coordinator, please work with me. Yes, so your practice plan for the week. Before we get there, let's just go. I want to make sure that you followed me. So good writing should involve, please, part one, a high degree of organization, systematic logical development of the information to be presented. I'm on slide 17, sorry, I went back a bit. Use of accurate words, meanings to avoid any ambiguity, choosing relevant and necessary skills and details. Next slide. Good writing should involve choosing the appropriate grammatical structures, following rules of mechanics, selecting or creating a style, using simple language. I say again, if somebody said this once and it never left me, if your communication, writing, or verbal presentation doesn't meet the understanding of a 13-year-old, believe me, you have lost half your audience. I know it sounds funny, but that is one of the realities of life. Following a format wherever conventions dictate also. So we're going to move after this. I believe the idea is to have a practice plan. So we're on the practice plan slide now. Practice plan, you will, listen. Well, on the next slide, please. Listen. One conversation daily, no interrupting. So what I think I would advise us to do, you see, the essence of a communication class is to not just give us information, but help us to be able to practice. I know sometimes I take pre-teens or teens, in different classes, And I always leave them with practice for the week or practice for the 2 weeks. Why? Because if you don't put what you have learned into practice, you find that you lose it. Okay. So I advise us, as part of this communication course, what do you need to do? So take everything that has been given to you today, go back and digest it, at your convenience. But you also want to make sure that you put up into practice. So one thing you can do is one conversation there daily, no interrupting. Practice it. Believe me, it takes practice. Especially if you come from a household of, sisters and brothers like I do, that we're used to jumping to each other's statements. Try it and say, okay, let me take one conversation where I don't interrupt, I just listen, give or receive feedback. Okay, because sometimes it's good to be on both ends to understand how feedback affects the hearer. Okay, present. And again, for presenting, you don't need to have a class or you can just record your own voice. Record your voice and play back to hear how you sound. And then write. Believe me, writing is a lifelong skill. You can spend the next X amount of years learning. So try it. I know someone like Dr. Orlando can attest. Some of us classmates have a WhatsApp group. When some of us started posting on our WhatsApp group, in fact, our communication was so jumbled. And in fact, that was about 10 years ago. But with time and reading other people's posts and seeing which ones did you like, which ones did you not like, you learn to say, oh, this is how I think communication should be. So you refine your skill sets as you go along. Okay, so key takeaways. We're on key takeaways slide now. Next slide, please, my coordinator. Awesome. So what are some of the key takeaways from this communication class? Number one, communication, please take this down, is not just about what the presenter or the speaker has said, but it's about what the hearer and the receiver understands. When the two align, you say X has communicated. When the two misalign, you say there has been a what? Miscommunication, or an inappropriate or not understood communication. It's important that we communicate and our hearers, our receivers receive. Okay, so communication is intended meaning mutually understood. What I am saying, let me be sure you hear me. Okay, communication is listening and feedback. In other words, active listening. I'm very particular about that. You listen, soft on the eyes, please. I keep saying that because if your eyes are hard and the people will talk, and nod. Nodding is enough to let someone know that this person is listening to me. Body language, that is when go to verbal and non-verbal communication, it's also a topic on its own. But your body language can even communicate a lot more than your words can. And obviously, prepare and practice. We cannot overstate that. And the last line here is the more we practice good communication skills, the more skilled we will become. So like I promised, I was going to stay within time and also gain back time for my coordinator. So I have 4 minutes before the 30-minute mark, and I'm also going to take an additional 5 minutes since the coordinators ate into my time to give for questions. Any questions, areas of clarification, or things that you're like, well, you rambled on for 1 hour. I didn't quite follow you here or follow you there. Anything people want to be clarified, or if not, I can obviously ask some questions as well or give us some key things to discuss. Any questions? At this point, I'll pause. Thank you. So we all fully understood everything that has been said. Okay. Okay. In that case, I will throw in, yes, please go ahead. What's your question? You can say it out if it's easier for you. You can type it in the chat. I believe Mr. Obong, we're waiting on you, sir. Beautiful. That's an awesome question. How do you overcome stage fright? First of all, what is stage fright? Okay, you want them to unmute you. Okay, I think I would ask if the coordinators can do that. But while they're doing that, what is stage fright? First of all, stage fright, if I want to summarize it simply, it's this, sometimes even genuine fear that comes on an individual just because they're going to go out into a crowd. Okay, Like you just can't, it's like your adrenaline mostly starts to pump seriously through your body. You almost, overcome by so many. But if you think about it, what is it really? It's your imagination and your mind playing tricks on you. Pure and simple. Why? Because the people you are facing, okay, it's not none of them, how can I put it now? Everyone is at different stage of their life, so it's not, it's just this feeling that comes over you. What I recommend you do is, number one, practice your material very thoroughly. Be sure you know the material. Two, look for icebreakers. I think some of the previous slides we used to cover from previous years even covered icebreakers. Look for icebreakers. What do I mean by icebreaker? Now, don't go there and say something to demean your qualification. Don't go there and say, oh, I'm not sure I'm qualified. No. The reason you are there is because you are qualified, and make sure that you let your audience know you are qualified. In fact, you can even give your qualifications like they did for me at the beginning, reading to you how many years experience, what you have done, to kind of give them that confidence. So don't go there and demean yourself. No. But go there and give an icebreaker. For instance, you can say, oh, something my child, my daughter. I mean, I have a daughter, and I like to say, oh, something my daughter said to me that morning. Maybe like, oh, mommy, this, something funny, something funny or light-hearted, but make sure that it's audience appropriate. You target your audience, but an icebreaker to soften. Because what does that do? It also gives you time to breathe, and all that. So, and make sure you study your audience, you look at them, and understand that there are people like you. Very important. There are people like you. And make sure that you know your material and that you focus on that. Now, you asked me, but what of where I'm addressing an audience that maybe is older than me, or I don't really know? You can use age, younger or older, as an advantage. For instance, if you feel you're addressing, let me use one that may be very common. Say you're a teenager, or you're a young adult, and maybe, for instance, you're in a church, okay, and you're addressing a whole church audience, okay, and it is large, full of people that maybe your father or your grandfather's age. Your tendency is to want to hide under the pulpit. I know that. What you can say is, oh, what a privilege to be here, and to, stand in the footsteps of, my fathers and grandfathers that have gone before me, and you say, wow, now I understand why they say, the pulpit can be difficult. And you laugh. It's something lighthearted to address the fact that you are in an uncomfortable position per se, but it's not demeaning your own qualifications. Does that help? Does that help, Mr. Obong that asked? Okay, I think Sorunke asked, and Mr. Obong said to unmute me. So, does it answer the question? What if your audience is more knowledgeable? Beautiful. If your audience is more knowledgeable, in fact, you tap into that knowledge. Tap into the knowledge. You say, you know what? For instance, I'm not a medical professional, but there are instances where you want to make references and you say, the medical professionals are among us. Please help me with this. You even make it in, as much as you can interactive, or you throw it so that you're now leaning in, allowing them to contribute. Are you getting it? Nobody expects you to know everything. In fact, nobody can know everything. But the important thing is that you tap into your audience, and that's the only way. So you know what you are there to do. If you are there to give an overview, you give your overview, and while you give your overview, you give allowance for those that even know more than you to contribute. Does that help? Any more questions? Wonderful. So at this point, I want to definitely hand back over to my coordinators. Again, it was a good privilege. Please, they have my contact. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. But one thing that this manual or this slide specifically address that I think is absolutely awesome is practice, practice, practice. And please don't limit yourself to just people in your how do you put it now? People in your demographic or your region of the world. Like I said, I've been inspired by people like Barack Obama, Michael Jackson. You won't believe people that have been Elvis Presley. I'm telling you, Prince, or the man from artist known as Prince. The reason is because these people carry something. As much as people like Daddy Adobe inspire me, these other people carry something that the world, is paying money to see. And mine is, what is it and how can we tap into it to make ourselves better presenters and orators as people. So with that, I will hand back over and say thank you very much. It's been very pleasant to be here, and I look forward to hearing from us. Thank you.
Hello, Mercy. Are you speaking? If you are speaking, we can't hear you.
I was muted. All right, good. Thank you so much, Mrs. Tinuke. That was a very beautiful presentation. Okay, so boss asked to he wants to speak. Hello, boss, are you there? Please unmute, boss. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Mrs. Tinuke. We appreciate you. You know, we've woken you up too early. This is probably what 3 a.m. your time or something, or 3 4 a.m. your time to do this. So once again, a big thank you, everybody in the chat room. I'm gonna say a big thank you to her. She did this for us in the year. This is 26. She did it, I believe, in 24. I believe she did it last year, 25. I'm certain she did it last year, 25. And this is the year 2026. We wake up all the time at 3 a.m. our time so that she can join this session. So once again, a big thank you, everybody. So Tinuke, please share your LinkedIn profile. We can follow you. You're like a big global mentor to all of us that are here. And yeah, so please, and if you've got any other platform that you want us to follow, that you dispense your years of knowledge and skills and experience and exposure via any platform, please share it. We'll be happy to engage. So once again, everybody, a big thank you, big thank you to her. To her. We appreciate you, man. God bless you. All right.
All right. Thank you so much, boss. Thank you so much, ma'am. Like I earlier said, it was a very, very beautiful presentation with you, and I believe every other persons could attest to that. Thank you so much, and do have a very beautiful day over there. Bye for now. All right, so we'll be moving on to the next session of today's class, and we'll be talking about